Canada, or more specifically IRCC, has just released a new set of rules that affects international students, people seeking asylum, people on visitors visa, in general, temporary residents. And as you may all know, a few months ago, IRCC already announced that they were trying to reduce the number of temporary residents from 6.5% to 5%. And hence, all policy changes they've announced since are to this effect. But before I go into that, I feel I have to let you know certain truths. I may have mentioned some of them in numerous videos, but this time I have to let you know that, especially because of all these new rules coming, which are catching people by surprise. Because if you followed me enough and do listen to what I say, these are things I've predicted long ago, and you should already know where coming. You often hear people claim Canada promised them literally heaven on earth. That just by becoming an international student or schooling in Canada, you will get your permanent residence and later your citizenship. Just by coming to Canada, you'll be able to work as a student, you will be able to work and pay your own tuition fees and all of that. They make it sound like once you get to Canada, everything is just going to be set and easy for you. They only get here to realize the facts on the ground, and then they become disappointed and start complaining about tuition fees and all of that. But I doubt Canada ever advertises or does promise any of this to anybody in any country. So if you think Canada promised you something, it's probably your agent or whoever you worked with who told you or gave you all those promises, not Canada per se. But as I always tell you, if you're working with someone, whether an agent or even a family member or whatever, it is better to also do your own research and understand the realities on the ground. Sometimes when some of us come here and tell you these truths, that you have to prepare yourself before you come, some people just feel we are discouraging them or we don't want them to also come to Canada. I mean, Canada is not mine. If you want to come, come. I have no problem with that because, as I mentioned, it doesn't stop me from working or take my money from you or do anything to me. So if you want to come, of course, you can come and I have no problem with that. But we always advise you, before you come to Canada, do not just listen to all these stories people tell you. Try and understand, hear from people who are here, people who are experiencing it, people who have lived it, not people who are living in another country and just telling you things they think are happening in Canada. By schooling in Canada does not in any way guarantee you permanent residence. And this is something you should all know by now. Especially with these new changes, it is only going to take someone who planned before coming to be able to gain permanent residence after school. Yes, you'll be paying about 4 times the tuition fee of Canadians. You'll be limited as to the number of hours you'll be working and all of that. But after all that investment and probably hardship and stress, you are still not guaranteed permanent residence. And this is the number one thing you have to understand. If anyone is telling you when you come to Canada, you will be able to work and pay your own tuition fees and all of that, that is almost impossible. Because considering the number of hours you are allowed to work and paying your rent and all of that, there's no way you'll be able to save enough to even get to your tuition fees. That's if you are able to even pay your rent and other expenses. So if you are coming here, it is in your own interest to make sure you have prepared yourself well enough before you leave the shores of your country and step foot in Canada. I've already mentioned the trends that I saw coming in the immigration policy of Canada long time ago. Canada has moved from when it used to be general. Just do this, do this, do this. Doesn't matter your field or whatever, and you may be able to get permanent residence. Now everything is going according to the needs of Canada. Yes, it's true. You want to come to Canada. We all know that. But does Canada need you? Why should Canada give you permanent residence so you can stay here? That is what you should be thinking about. What do you think you have that Canada needs? That is what Canada is now moving towards. Before COVID, everything was just general. But now it has changed because COVID exposed the economy to our weaknesses. During COVID, we had a lot of health workers leaving the field. And we realized, wow, we used to think we had enough health workers, but actually we don't. We had a lot of people who had to quit their jobs because they just weren't comfortable with their working environment or their pay or whatever reason. And as a result, it got to a point where we realized that, yes, even though we had all these immigration policies bringing in a lot of people, they come in and most of them are not really helpful. So now they decided, okay, yes, we are going to continue with our immigration policies, but we will only be bringing in people who are going to be useful to the economy. People who can come in and almost immediately give us something. When I go about with the new policies, you will understand this specific point that I just made. And even with the express entry, which brings in permanent residence, if you've been following it for a while now, you will realize it is mostly geared towards the category system. The categories that IRCC have set aside and ensured that they will now be bringing in more people through those categories. It's the people who fit in these categories. If you don't, good luck. So if I were you and I want to come to Canada, the first thing I'll do is do my research. Read into what it takes, which path you want to take to come to Canada. Do I want to come as a student? If I'm coming as a student, do I have enough money? Because it is very expensive. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Which program am I going to do? Which province am I going? Does that province need me? If I do this program in Canada now, am I going to be useful to them? Will they need me after school? If you want to come in as a permanent resident, what do I have that Canada will need? Because then you'd have to go through either the federal express entry or the provincial nominee programs. And all of these are geared towards Canada's needs. Not what you need, but what Canada needs. If you hear Canada is inviting people to come to Canada, it's not just because they feel like bringing in more people. It is because they know what they get from these people. And they are not just going to bring in someone who will come and be relying on the system. So as I mentioned earlier, do you really want to come to Canada? Make sure you do your research and figure out which pathway is going to be good enough for you, which pathway that suits you. If none of them suits you better, probably because you are not educated enough, not having enough work experience, you are not francophone and all of that, and as a result, you cannot qualify for permanent residence, and you cannot get a job in Canada to come as a foreign worker, and you also know you do not have enough money to come to school as an international student, and all other avenues are closed to you. It is not compulsory to come to Canada. There are many other countries where you may fit in. So don't just focus on Canada. Look elsewhere. Try and see where else that you may fit, where else that may favor you. Who knows? You may even do much better in that other country. Or if Canada is still the country you really want to come, after moving to elsewhere, you can maybe put yourself in a position where Canada would now need your services. Then from there, you can come to Canada. But do not force yourself and focus solely on Canada and find just any way that you can get here. Just because you think, oh, when I get there, God will make a way. It doesn't work that way. You have to intentionally plan on how you're going to get here, the ways around it, and having the means to support yourself. Nothing is free in Canada. So if you are coming here, you should be ready for whatever is in store for you. Have a nice day.